I'm starting a YouTube channel. As this is the very first video I'm making on my channel, I think this one needs to be, who am I? What am I doing here? How did I get here? Only time will tell. So there are probably 4 sections of my life that really matter and kind of add to who I am as a person. So I'm going to talk about my meme account because that is quite a large part of my life. My parents, living in Christchurch, so the earthquakes and terrorist attack, and then my career pathways, because who doesn't want to know where I'm going in life? So, I'm Olivia, I'm 19 years old, I live in Christchurch, New Zealand. If you can't tell from the accent, I run the meme account singing.olive. If you aren't aware, I would assume that all of you are from, well, I say all of you, I probably won't get many people watching because I'm not that interesting. Anyway, if you're from the meme account, hello! And I'm not planning on telling people in my real life about this because I'm embarrassed. I am filming on my phone, so bear with me if I end up talking to the screen and not the camera. Sorry. So, I run the meme account. I have run it for 2 years. I think it's existed for about 3. The history of it is that one of my close friends ran a account, I think, and that got deleted by Instagram when they just went through and culled a whole bunch of accounts for no good reason. So their friends made another account and got it to the same following as the previous one and then gifted it to them, I believe as a birthday present, but I'm not entirely sure. And it was used to post mostly fandom related things like Super Who-lock, so Supernatural, Doctor Who and Sherlock, and I think some Marvel content, quite different to how it is now. I do try to stick away from fandoms. So they got sick of it because something that you may not be aware of when running this is that people can be assholes. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube, but people can be. Especially if it's something large that winds up on the explore page, because then people can start to get super controversial and say, oh, this is bad, and it's like, why did you waste your time commenting that? So it is frustrating, and I completely understand why they left it, because it's hard. It is hard work. I don't quite think people understand. My parents certainly don't. Especially finding the content, because if you aren't aware, I do try to stick away from all of the lockdown stuff that's going on, because you're in lockdown. You've got all of the information. Do you really want more information? I'm sounding like my degree right now. Anyway, so that's the origin of the account. Last October, I started posting my little boy Noah. Here he is. And that hugely increased the rate of my follower count. I went up by about 6,000. And I want to address this. I'm grateful for every follower that I have. I know some aren't still active, but I can't really do a lot about that. I appreciate everyone. For some people, 25,000 or 25,500 isn't a lot, and for others it's a huge amount. And for me it's a huge amount. It's far more than I ever thought would happen. So I started posting Noah, and everyone loves him. I do too, don't get me wrong. But that's how it happened, and I think people like the format. So now we're on the early life part of my Wikipedia page. I'm still technically in early life, I suppose, but I was born in Auckland, the largest city in New Zealand, in the North Shore. My passport says Takapuna, but I'm pretty sure that's a suburb, right? Not its own town. Anyone from New Zealand care to comment on that? So I was born in Auckland. When I was 2, my parents separated, and they've currently got their own partners, so they divorced when I was probably about 4, but when I was 2 we moved down to Christchurch. When I was 4, my brother was born from my dad. Well, not from my dad, but my dad helped his creation. And when I was 6, my sister was born, also due to my dad. I don't have any siblings through my mum, which is kind of fun. I can pick and choose when I want to be an only child or when I want to be an eldest child. It's great. So, yeah, they live in Auckland. My dad works between Auckland and Australia, so that I can actually use him if I want to go to Australia and stay somewhere. I could go alone and stay with him in his flat and then go shopping or something, which is always good to know. Yeah, so we'll move on to my, what would it be called on Wikipedia? I don't know, we'll call it Troubles in Town. So, while I was at primary school, we had 2 major earthquakes. One of them actually happened while I was in Auckland with my dad. I think it was when I was 9, year 5, and it was the September 4th, and no deaths. I don't even remember there being injuries. It was just a huge shock, because I think it was 7.2 magnitude, and pretty, not like pretty close to the surface, but not that deep. It's not that deep. So I was in Auckland for that. I woke up and my dad was like, there's been an earthquake in Christchurch, and I was like, what's that? Because I was 8. 9. I was 9. So I wasn't as traumatized, I think, because I wasn't there for that first one, and I never woke up in the middle of the night feeling shaking. Then there was the one on February 22nd in 2011 when I was 10, and that one was harder because it was closer to the surface. It was 6.4, but because it was so close to the surface and people were in town, they weren't at home safe, they were in town walking around and buildings were collapsing, and it's not a pretty picture, and I don't recommend anyone looks up the photos. Almost everyone knows someone who was affected. My stepdad knew 2 people that were killed, and he had to attend the funeral of, which is sobering. but I was safely at school, so I was fine. The only thing that affected our house was a TV that just went, like, it was one of those big boxy ones. I'm sorry if you're younger than like 14, but they're big boxes, and it just went onto the ground and cracked it, so we had like sound issues, but that was it. Then the second disaster we had was our terrorist attack. Obviously I'm not going to mention his name, I don't remember his name, I don't care about his name, but I'm going to mention where I was and my general feeling. So if you are from New Zealand, skip this. So I was at the climate strike in the Cathedral Square, which is a very short walk away from the mosque, and I still had to get home. I'd met up from my previous with people from my previous high school, and I was just kind of marching with them because I was 1 year out at this point. So now I'm 2 years out of high school. This was my first year. So I was protesting with one of my close friends and the high schoolers, and then we suddenly had police come in, and we were like, well, we're not gonna move, like, we're protesting, you can't make us leave. And then I started hearing rumours of a knife attack at girls' high school, and that they'd gone into lockdown, and the only thing true about that was the lockdown. And then I heard it was a gunman, and I was assuming it was still girls' high. So all of this time that I was getting home, because we walked to the bus interchange, I took 3 students back to high school and called their parents to make sure that they got picked up and went home, because at this point I was pretty sure would go into lockdown, because I was hearing of schools all over the country going into lockdown. So I was like, into lockdown, you can come and chill at my place, your parents can pick you up. So we bussed back, and it's very lucky we got a bus, because all buses ended up stopping not much later. So we went straight from the square to the bus interchange, so that's about a 7-minute walk. Then probably had about 5 minutes wait for a bus. The bus had to take a detour because roads were closed. And this whole time I was thinking that this gunman was targeting school students. So I was terrified, obviously. It wasn't until I got home that I heard it was a mosque, and I felt so ashamed that I felt scared, because I had no right to feel guilty. I had no right to feel scared, sorry, for being a school kid, because, well, not really, but appearing to be a school kid, but when in reality he was targeting a race of people who have done nothing wrong. If you want to blame people, blame ISIS, but don't blame an entire religion. If you want to blame a religion, there are plenty others. I'm an atheist, by the way, so if I do offend anyone, I'm very sorry. I do try and think about what I'm saying, but sometimes I am wrong, so please correct me. And I don't want to say I'm sorry if I offend anyone, but it's all a learning experience, because I've been brought up with tolerance, but I don't understand religion, if that makes sense. So that was the attack, and I'm very proud of my country. I wouldn't call myself anywhere near as patriotic as Americans, but I'm proud of our police force, I'm proud of our Prime Minister, I'm very lucky. And 51 people would. On to a lighter note, we'll move on to my next topic, which is what I'm currently studying. Had to take a breather there. So, at the time of the attack, I was actually studying at the Hagley Dance Company because I really enjoy dancing and choreographing. I haven't in ages. I think the last time I choreographed something was a piece dedicated to my favourite YouTuber, Benedict Townsend, where I took quotes from one of his videos, put it to some shitty music, and choreographed it. I started off doing a voiceover to it, but that wasn't working. The beats were so off. So Benedict Townsend, if you ever see this, I'm sorry. So I was at Hagley Dance Company. I left after a term because my limbs cannot take it. I was also iron deficient. I don't know if that helps, but I was. And I was exhausted all the time, even though I'd go to bed at like 11 and then wake up at 7. So I had plenty of sleep. But I was always tired, and I wasn't in a fantastic place mentally, which we won't go into because no one asked. So I took the rest of the year off. I worked as full-time as I could get. I had 2 jobs. I worked for V-Base, which is an events company, and a shoe shop. I will not say the name because I still work there. Yeah. So I worked as full-time with those 2 as I could. I ended up getting so much more work for the shoe shop than V-Base. And I terminated the contract was terminated because if you don't get work for 3 months, they ask if you want to be taken off the books, or you basically just have to take the next shift they give you. And I was working a lot for the shoe store, so I couldn't really take anything else. I also wasn't able to drive anywhere, so when I was busing, I was able to bus, but I was terrified because I'm a woman. At night, that's no. So I went through a breakup. I turned to my favourite book series, Ranger's Apprentice, and recommended it to my mum, who then read it to her class, who thoroughly enjoyed it. I was very proud, but she told me that I should be a librarian. And the thing is, I always wanted to be a librarian when I was in year 6, year 5, so about 10. I always wanted to be a librarian, but I never really thought of it as a young person's career path. So I dropped it, and then Mum put the idea back into my head, and I applied to study a Bachelor of Library and Information Studies. which might be another video if anyone's interested. So I study that. Not often. I end up just kind of binging chapters and then writing my essays in 3 days, which isn't a good study method. Trust me, I'm trying. I might put a time lapse in of me studying when I do the video, which will actually make me study. So that's that. Yeah. I didn't really have any other questions from my Instagram, so that's my life. So if you want, you can like this video or subscribe. I don't really mind. I'm more doing this to keep myself motivated and productive during this period of time, because the past 4 weeks I do not remember because I have done shit. So if you want to be updated, I'll probably be posting every day. I'm gonna film a video about Noah next. So stay tuned.